I did 2 videos the last 2 nights about how I don't think anything's going to change in Indian country until our people at the grassroots are given the opportunity to understand what exists now. Because there's a lot of fear out there around giving up, something. What are we giving up? And it's a very complicated subject, but I was explaining briefly how the federal government has taken legal jurisdiction, over us and lands reserved for Indians and put it under the jurisdiction of the federal government, and then taken our lands, our children, our resources, our education, and everything else, and put it under the province. So that's why there are these relationships between, like, how does the province end up taking our kids? Well, because that's why. Because 91 is the federal head of power and 92 is the provincial head of power. And under the provincial head of power, the provincial governments have legal responsibility for children. So tonight I want to share a little bit about how in any kind of governance system, there has to be a way of reporting to those served. Good evening, Chief Bowen, and I'm not talking about you, my riding buddy. So there's got to be a way of reporting, and I do have quite a bit of anger around this issue. In today's day and age where we have all this modern technology, and if a person isn't that technologically savvy, they can find help. I just hear so much dissension in the communities, like, well, what are the leaders doing? Where'd they go? Why are they traveling? Oh God, they're just staying at fancy hotels again, just eating. Look how heavy they are. Like, all this negativity in the community. And that could all be solved just simply by doing, like, I don't know, a monthly update, doing a monthly report. And I think what always happens too is that people try to get too fancy with their reporting. They have to make some kind of a fancy newsletter, and then it's got to be edited and it's got to go to a printer. No, I think that, each of the leaders should decide that you're going to report to your people in whatever way you feel comfortable. And I know not everyone is on Facebook, but many, 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 many Indigenous people are on Facebook. I've noticed that, really educated, more city Indigenous people are on Twitter. Grassroots people are all on Facebook. It's just really about reporting to the people on a regular basis so that we know what's going on, we know what's happening with our money, we know why you're doing what you're doing. I'm going to come back to it again in consultations. In Indian country everywhere, pretty much it's a ghost town at the band offices on Fridays. And some places like my First Nation and my husband's First Nation too has instituted a practice of every second Friday is a payday Friday, so they just close the office, and that's good. I've always said to any chief and council that I worked for, that on Fridays you should be visiting. You should be visiting your people, and you should, if you're going to go around and have some evenings where you visit, then make a poster about that schedule, that you're not in the office because you're visiting last night, and you're out having tea, you're out talking to people, you're out seeing what they're thinking about, what they care about. And some people will come to a community meeting, but a lot of people won't. They want a smaller setting. So I sound really angry tonight because it's like super annoying. It's like, how come a simple thing like telling us where you went and what you did and maybe why you went there and what you accomplished, if anything? Well, how come our leaders don't do that? And so I didn't even do that when I was a leader. Because it's just not done and it needs to be done. And so I think that's super important. And it's also important for staff. It's even more important for staff because our staff either never leave the office or they're always gone from the office. There doesn't seem to be any balance, I was calling and calling and calling and calling and I couldn't get through. And there's a lot of cost savings now with automated telephone systems where you're pressing the number and you're trying to find the right, it's not conducive to building trust and helping people feel like they're cared about. So I think there needs to be a balance also with the staff. They have to have schedules where they leave their desk and not disappear. When they leave their desk, people actually know where they're gone. Having a good receptionist is super important. For years at my husband's nation, there was a woman on reception that was like, man, she knew where everybody was. She knew where even all the band members were. Like, if you wanted to know where anyone was, you called her, and she'd be like, oh yeah, they're gone to Ottawa, they're gone for this meeting. That is typically called gossiping, But it's not gossiping in Indian country. We care about each other and we want to know what people are doing. So again, tonight it's a bit of a rant. I apologize. I might end up writing and it'll be more calm and, all civilized. But I'm just it's just such simple things that could be done to reduce the conflict. The other thing is band meetings. And I know there's fancier ways of calling it. Sovereignists out there are probably saying, why is she saying Indian Act? Why is she saying band meeting? I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but under the Indian Act, it is a band meeting. And that's just the way it is right now. But if you're not reporting and communicating with your people, it doesn't matter what you call it. You're still not reporting or communicating with your people. So there's still going to be a division. And that creates this us against them mentality in the community that's super sickening. Like our leaders and staff are there to serve us and work for us, and they are not the enemy. And we as the members, we're not the enemy, so we have to create processes that encourage people to stop doing that us and them thing. It's very bad. One of the things that's happened in my community, for example, we didn't have band meetings for holy mackerel, like hardly. Leaders were scared to go to band meetings because they were like, they'd get beat up or they get scared of the angry, here she comes again, she's so mad, It's just the way it is. When you're in leadership, when you stand in the light, people see you, and hurt people. So it shouldn't be that way. There shouldn't be that kind of violence in our community, but it's all over the world. It's not just in Indian country. Watch the news one night, and you'll see how leaders are attacked everywhere. That's just part of the job, I guess. I don't know. Let's say we're meeting, every second Wednesday of the month, there's going to be a band meeting. And then if there's a loss, many communities don't like to have meetings when we're grieving. And so that's understandable if that's the case in that community. Then there should be a thing that says, and when there is a loss that delays the band meeting, it automatically happens the next Wednesday. I sound so arrogant, but these are not difficult things. These are not difficult concepts to implement. I know there may be a few places where the people really feel good about their leadership and staff and how they're connected, but not that many. And we need to fix that. And we're all responsible for that, not just the leaders and the staff, but us as members as well. The Haida went to court out of British Columbia here. The Haida Nation went to court asserting that the company owed them a duty to consult, and the government owed them a duty to consult. And the Tack River Tlingit First Nation, where I'm sitting right now on Tack River Tlingit land, made similar arguments, less about the company with the TRT, but it doesn't matter. What happened was, generally speaking, the court joined those cases and went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. And at the Supreme Court of Canada, the court said, yes, in fact, the federal government and provincial governments have a duty to consult Indigenous peoples when their rights could potentially be affected. And so where there's a treaty right, it's established, we have treaties. And where there is no treaty, we are asserting Aboriginal rights. And we say, hey, there's no treaty here, so you got to talk to us. And where there is a treaty, we say, hey, there's a treaty here, and so you got to talk to us. So the federal government and provincial governments have a duty to consult with us. Now there's, oh my God, lawyers have made millions of dollars since that case. Anyways, and then there was more case law that did establish that there was a duty that the duty to consult is also owed to us by our own leaders. Some people ended up having to sue their own governments because leaders under the Indian Act tend to go forward because it's very easy to meet the consultation, and it's not even called consultation. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. That's okay. Say the right thing in the comments. For example, and maybe it's been amended because I've been too busy drying moose meat and whatever, doing my thing, sewing, and so I'm not necessarily up on the case law. But generally speaking, under the Indian Act, the obligation to consult with us kind of went like this. Okay, you have to have one meeting, and then if so many people came to that meeting, 51% of those present had to say yes. So the quotas were really small, easy to meet. And a lot of the land claim agreement approval processes are the same. It's not that hard. That is probably changing. I was talking to somebody yesterday from another community that said that their community moved to a 4-year term. And I was like, oh. And they said they didn't have any memory of receiving any invite to a meeting where, they were asked, do you want to change from a 2-year term to a 4-year term? I mean, we've been talking about that since like the 90s. I said to her, I don't really know what to tell you. You'd have to try to find the record. There should be record keeping, Like we as members should be able to walk into our band office and say, I'd like to see the minutes of the last chief and council meeting. Not verbatim, just what decisions were made on my behalf so that I can understand and I can go to any one of my chief or counselor and say, geez, I noticed you made a decision about, tomatoes. How come you did that? And then the chief can say, oh, well, because now we've all got to eat tomatoes. That's the new rule. Or whatever it is, so that we can communicate with it instead of all this nasty, what's going on, what are they doing, and attacking. I don't like that. Even though I feel kind of like I'm attacking, I just want accountability. So just in closing, I'm not slamming. I mean, it sounds like I'm slamming leaders, but I guess in a way I am. I don't know. It's just super frustrating that such simple things like letting people know where you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and what you got out of it for us, And sometimes all of our leaders and staff, all they get out of it is their own self-improvement, which is of value as well, because I am you and you are me, So if somebody is getting, empowerment and value and it didn't turn out to be such a great big deal for the whole community, they just need to say that. I thought there was going to be more there than just me benefiting, but, I really learned XYZ and I'm really happy I went because I'm a better person. And if I'm a better person, then I'm a better leader, or if I'm a better person, then I'm a better servant. And so let's change it. Let's start talking about it. And of course, the things I'm saying don't apply to every leader. They sure don't. There are some leaders that are doing a really good job, and some staff out there that are doing a really good job. And we all know who they are. And if you have any ideas of what you'd like me to talk about, I'm open to that too. But I have a lot of thoughts around the public service, and working for the nation. And maybe I'll try to talk about that next time. Because I think being a public servant, in Indian country is a little bit different than being a public servant for the provincial or federal governments or a municipality. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. I love all your comments and I've tried to answer them all. I cheered up. I was super grumpy when we started, but I feel much better now. It takes courage. It takes courage to say what I'm saying. There's a duty to report. They should be having band meetings. Like, it's not rocket science. And we should be consulted. And there should be record keeping.